And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And we have Tim Alexander here is on every Tuesday for a full hour, and at least half hour. Sometimes Thursday is a full hour because we have our nuclear expert cannot always make it. Chris Harris is working with the Nuclear Navy. That's not his real name. Tim, we've got a lot of things happening over the weekend. I've heard rumors that the Trans-Pacific Partnership was held off by Rand Paul, and I was extremely disgusted when I saw the Fox News Network, which I occasionally watch only one show, which is O'Reilly. I've now repented of that because O'Reilly and Dana Perino, who came up with a vicious attack on Rand Paul, this is another info babe who needs to, as they say, stop talking. How's that? In other words, she does not have a right to an opinion.
Stop things, and I think he did a very, very positive thing. That basically wants to shred our Constitution, and it will give non-U.S. courts, not even courts, but this is what we think because it's all secret. You see, it's secret from the public.
But we have the Republicans love to do this now when they have
attorneys the right to decide matters of law and no appeal to the United States courts. That's blatantly unconstitutional. They can't do it. In fact, even the fast track process becomes unconstitutional because treaties can only be passed by 3/4 of those senators present. Has to be by the Constitution. You can't get around that. And if you do, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, and it has no effect. At least in
they want to try to do it with 51%, and of course, we have the Republican head senator trying to push this through, and he's got a smirk on his face where he has a agenda for 3 things that he's actually trying to pass. This is only just one of the 3 he's trying to shove through before the end of their term and they go off for the summer. I think that the Republicans think it's real funny because they can do this when they have a Democratic president because they don't want the blowback having a Republican president when they shove through this garbage. And they know darn well that the political backwash will hit the Democrats and Obama when really it's their agenda and they want to shove this through because they're all shills for transnational corporations. They're all whores for the world banks and so on.
Theory.
Yeah, I know. You know, I get sick of people trying to say I'm stupid and I'm this and that. You know what? You people out there that don't want to hear the truth, turn off the damn radio, walk away, and suffer. And believe me, it will cause a premature death.
Most of our listeners are pretty smart. They know what's going on.
They know what's going on. It's only the idiots out there that think that somehow we're making this up. And the problem is, you see, 99% of what you quote in your blog and what I say on the show, 99.9% is in the public media, from AP Newswire to Reuters to even in what we call the garbage networks that try to spin it. It's all there. If people just read, they'll go, oh my gosh, Deagle's not full of it. Tim Alexander's not full of it. Even things like David Icke and Alex Jones and all these other people, they're not full of it. Jeff Rentz, no, they're not full of it. Guess what? It's right in your face. And people have nerve, I call vicious ignorance. They have the damn nerve to say, we're crazy. No, they're crazy. They have vicious ignorance and they need to get over it.
Well,
they need to get over their own.
I just hit publish on my news blog, and I was just able, with pressing time today, to just get a few things published. I'm going to update some more. But what I did is so scary. And, I mean, I do this, and I've been doing this for years. And, you know, how long have we got before we go on break here? We got about 3 or 4 minutes. Maybe.
Right.
Okay, well, here's what's happening.
5 minutes.
We just got off of the largest ever, at least since World War II, anti-submarine exercise in the North Sea. That's, between the UK and Europe. Now we have begun a very large NATO plus, I call it, war games in the Arctic area. The plus part consists of Sweden, Finland, and Switzerland, which are officially neutral and not members of NATO. Okay, as of yesterday, Putin deployed his air defenses in a snap combat war drill. You can say these are 2 totally separate things. The media is not connecting them, even so far, the alternative media, because it was Memorial Day yesterday. I haven't seen any articles connecting them, but I connect them because it tells me that when Russia does an emergency combat readiness drill, right after right at the same time, this massive NATO plus drill is going on right next door to Russia and in the Arctic. It tells me the Russians, it's not just a response. There's a high probability that Russia is seriously concerned about a surprise attack. And, I mean, there have been rumors about that for some time. But if that's true, that puts everything on a hair trigger. And that puts us very much where we were in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Tim, here's something that people don't understand. The hair trigger idea is nice to think of, that there's enough sanity that nobody will actually, fire. It's like a Mexican standoff, right? Who's going to blink first? I think there's elements within the Russian military that basically said, to heck with America and the West. If we think that the war is imminent, we're just going to do a preemptive attack, and we're going to take them out before they can even think about taking us out. And that's the problem, is we're making it look so inevitable, because here's what I think is going to happen. The war between the Houthi rebels and the Saudi Arabians is totally backed by us. The war between the Quds Force and the Shiite militia and ISIS, which we are supporting, is going on up in the north in Iraq and right on the border of Iran. We know they want to take out Syria with the fall of Ramadi and Palmyra, these cities, and literally the destruction of ancient monuments and killing of Christians and Muslims, by the way, that won't go along with them. ISIS, which is supported by the state of It's a Real Hell and America and the West, is literally pushing it to the point where they know if there's an attack on the only naval base that the Russians have in Syria and against Iran, Russia is immediately at war with us.
Well,
and Russia
China
won't necessarily
has offered to send military aid to Iraq. And basically, the Iraqi government has distanced itself from us. It wants us out because we're not fighting ISIS. We're supporting ISIS. We're doing
they know that.
Of munitions, of weapons, of food, medical supplies to the IS fighters. Now, the mainstream, the globalist dominated, Jewish controlled mainstream media won't tell you that. But believe you me, the governments around the world know what's going on. And the Iraqi government wants us the hell out. And that's why Iran is coming in with fighters. That's why Russia and both China now are making moves to aid Iraq in this fight against ISIS because they want to split Iraq up. This is literally the Third World War. We're just not at the phase where most people consider it the Third World War yet. Although the Pope, I disagree with most of what he says. I have to say he was right on the money about 3 months ago when he says we're in the Third World War. It's just piecemeal.
He's not listening. The Pope is not a stupid man.
Less piecemeal.
The Pope is not a stupid man. He's just not preaching the gospel.
Well,
he's an intelligent man.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, he's a Jesuit, and they have all kind of agendas. But what we're seeing now is potential war, and within one mistake of a junior officer somewhere, both in the South China Sea, in the Ukraine, and now really not only in the Middle East and in Yemen and Syria and Iran, but across Europe. And, I mean, there's no reason for this.
But we've degraded our military enough now. We've got the lowest number of active military troops we've had since the Second World War. We do not have the ability to mount a two-front war anywhere in the world. We don't have the power or the economy that we've done on purpose because of Obama degrading our military, and the withdrawal of money from the military and our infrastructure to support this. So what we're getting into, we can't get out of, and we can't prosecute. And you can blame Obama, and we can blame the Democrats, but the Republicans are right lockstep. They like to use the shield.
We better do something quick because a lot of us are going to die.
Exactly. And I think what I see happening is by the late summer, early fall, around September, the big question you asked during the break, and I want you to expand this because you often have some real good rants while we're on off air, is why? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. And I want you to expand
giant letters flashing, W-H-Y. Why are we headed towards World War III?
The reason why is what's called bad astrophysics science. Tier 2 science, basically, the globalists know they're looking at deep space. They see gravity waves coming in that are going to cause major earthquakes, volcanoes, and a lithospheric slip, which creates our mountains. Mountain ranges aren't created over thousands or millions of years. They're created over months to years. And they're created when the actual crust of the earth slides on the mantle and actually crunches up and forms mountains. So the Himalayas and these mountains rose up over a period of months, not millennia or millions of years. And the same thing happens when the crust moves at hot spots underneath it, so there become dormant magma domes from previous volcanoes move because the crust has moved on the mantle. What's going on is the globalists are panicking, and they want to have totalitarianism. They want to get rid of money because they're now saying the only way they can keep the interest rates low so nations can still afford to actually stay solvent is to get rid of physical money. The only way they can get totalitarian control is
the debts to these privately owned central banks.
The problem is, remember now, the banks, that's what we have with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Partnership that they have, that they're trying to set up, is basically they make all governments of all nations vestigial. They basically are like an appendix. They have no validity. There's no such thing as representative government. When these partnerships are done, there will not even be U.S. or Canadian or European courts that will actually be able to kind of sue these people.
Corporate bodies.
Yeah, basically the corporate bodies will, as in 1973, the Council on Foreign Relations, Foreign Affairs, which is their journal, fall, I think it's September issue, stated they wanted a 10-zone region of the world, and now we're zone number 3 in America and Canada and Mexico.
We don't have to put up with this, folks.
Well, the problem is, you see, they're still proceeding with the Texas corridor. Even under the so-called governor, they're lying. The fact is that they've been making more and more rule changes to Social Security and everything to harmonize the Canadian police system, the American federalizing the police down here for 18 more cities and towns since just last year. And, of course, even things like Jade Helm, this is basically a form of terror porn by the government, terror porn, so they can terrify the people or make us so angry we actually are picking a fight with.
You still there?
And they punched you in the nose. What are you going to do? You're going to grab them by the neck and choke them to the ground.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of covering of Jade Helm because I think there's way too much hype there. There's some meat there, but there's an awful lot of hype. And like you say,
let me explain it. Everything is. Yeah, but fear porn is true. And it's been basically backed off. But the whole point is, they've already got a red, green, and blue list. Okay, the red you're dead list is already there. People say this doesn't exist. It does. Okay, I know from the inside from actually working in the federal government. Okay, they have to understand why are they doing all these things, because the globalists think they're going to preserve civilization after all hell breaks loose on Earth, and they're predicting that by this fall there'll be what's called weather chaos. Now, you know they control the weather. So if they want weather chaos, like, for example, finally, after us embarrassing them about the blocking highs, we're now getting the moderate cooling period where we're heading into an ice age again, which is basically just a mini cooling period for 180 years cycle for about 60 to 70 years, where we're going to have increased rainfall in the southwestern United States and 3 to 4 degrees, 5 degrees cooler weather, so that we'll have more rainfall and that cycle. But they've been blocking it because they're blocking the radiation coming in from Fukushima Daiichi. They're measuring with the weather, the earthquakes and volcanoes all over the planet, and they're terrified because of this approaching dwarf star that's sending in hyperelliptical comets, and it's going to cause a major Earth cataclysm. And they want to hide underground when the rest of us fry. That's their attitude. Now, people have to understand this. This is real. This is not imaginary. I've been in the underground cities. I've talked to these characters. They believe it's like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory ticket to go underground. These maniac globalists, news media people, Hollywood stars, billionaires, they all think they're in a special club, and they're going to get saved by staying in this club and shutting up. The fact is they're actually going to seal their own doom. And bad astrophysics, as Professor McCanney says, he doesn't want to be in a cave where he can't dig himself with his hands more than 20 minutes. He's not going to go down a mile and a half or more underground in an underground city to try to hide from what's coming. The Bible
says that basically those in the caves won't be saved.
Well, it says it right there in Revelation 6. So people, the fact is, fools will not believe this when God is the God of the universe. He knows end from the beginning, because to God there is no time. The past, present, and future to God are now. And, his knowledge is also absolute and infinite.
So So it's not just theology, it's science.
Right. And what we want to convince people is that many of the people that you meet on a daily basis are not eternal people. I call them shadow people, because they will cease to exist. Because, you see, the death of the physical body is what we call physical death. The death of the soul is called the death of the second death. And people think, well, no, you're going to eternally be punished in hell. No, you're not. You're going to be annihilated. And annihilation means you cease to exist. God is not a cruel God. If you don't have a relationship with him, you just cease to exist. He takes you out of his memory. And that's what's coming. For many of the people, even people that are more decent than me, they're not going to exist because they don't have a relationship with God. And even if you do things that are good because they're to pump up your own ego, but they're not done in God's will, that's the definition of evil. And what I see happening here is these globalists think they're going to save the human race, or a portion of it, by, merging with technology and interacting with advanced cultures from other worlds and hiding in underground cities and off-world space platforms and colonizing Mars, etc. They're all fools. They're not going to survive. And what we have to understand here on Earth...
Satan is the father of all lies, and there's nobody he lies to more than his minions.
Well, the stupid minions. Again, we have to understand, you people out there that think, yes, we're going to prove to you as events open up. Now, I've been telling people for years, I just had a request over the weekend, people said, I saw the first 4 chapters of the Small Scroll Prophecy, but I don't see the other 8. That's because I've been restrained from holding them back until the time when things really... People are not ready to receive, okay? They're not. And they're not ready to receive a prophetic word, not just a calculation or geopolitical analysis for a prophetic word, because their hearts are not ready. And I won't do it until God tells me to. The very first sign people need to watch, and I'm going to say this in advance before it happens, because I don't know when it'll happen. But I can tell you, this sign is when they close the Strait of Hormuz and the traffic stops, that's the first sign that the birth pangs are on, and we're moving very rapidly toward, number one, enough destruction to create a world peace treaty, to partitioning of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, and the setting up a Palestinian state, and a world government run by corporations. We were very, very close. I think that most of this could easily be done in the next year under the last gasp of the Obama administration. The Trans-Pacific Transatlantic Partnership, the getting rid of money, the cataclysm right now that's brewing, where the Russians are getting ready for an attack. Because if we attack Iran, we're coming to our coasts every week. They could shove out 1,000 miles out to sea high-speed, hypersonic cruise missiles that could destroy our cities, and yet our fools in Washington, D.C., the district, or criminals think this is a funny thing to do and they're going to get away with it, or somehow we're protected by a space shield. They're idiots.
Yeah, right.
They're fools. They're demonically energized maniacs. That's the facts.
You got that right.
If you think you know better out there and you're in the NSA or DARPA, whatever, and you want to fence with Dr. Deagle intellectually,
I'm mistaken.
at Spa. Go to my spa for hot rock massage. Welcome back, and we're talking on the break about the lies of what's going on. They try to pretend, for example, Saddam Hussein died when, of course, he had crooked teeth and was about 3 or 4 inches too short. His wife walked into the room and said, "That's not my husband." The double that they killed.
That's a double. Don't you think I know my own husband? Saddam Hussein,
right.
Let me back up on this story a little bit, because this is directly connected to what's happening in Damascus.
Right.
During the first Gulf War under George Bush Sr., we stomped the living heck out of the Iraqi forces, and there was nothing to stop us from going to Baghdad. Nothing. But George Bush Sr., of course, he lied, but that's all he's ever done his whole life. He said we didn't have a mandate to go into Baghdad, blah, blah, blah. What really stopped him was we knew that Saddam Hussein had at least 19 al-Hussein missiles, and that's what we were calling the Scud. They were re-engineered by his engineers. Missiles loaded with chemical and biological warheads. Now, during the first Gulf War, he was firing Scud missiles at Saudi Arabia and at Israel. And, you know, I sat there with my wife. We'd have TV on in the evening and the morning, and I had a tape in, and as soon as the Scud alert come in, I taped it, and I have gobs of tapes of Scud alerts, you know. Well, the reality is, and by the way, we were told we were knocking these Scuds down with our our interceptors. When the reality is, after the war, they did a deep, in-depth study, and they found we knocked somewhere between 1 and 3 down. 1 for certain, 2 maybe. When they they re-engineered the fuselage of the missile to give it a little bit more range to hit Israel. It made it unstable in terminal reentry. The warhead still went where it was supposed to go, but the fuselage itself tended to break apart. So we were firing these Patriot missiles, and they're getting relatively close, a mile, half mile away. And we see the missile breaking apart. We said, "Oh, we hit it." No, we didn't. But in any case, what Saddam was doing was demonstrating his ability to put ordnance on target, and demonstrating the inability of the Western allies to stop that. That's why we didn't go into Baghdad, because he could have taken Israel out, as well as several key cities in Saudi Arabia with biological and chemical warheads. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, by the way, quick announcement: we just found out that our authorized.net is back up. Tim, I just want to say this quick emergency report. I just got Michelle walked into my office. Authorized.net's back up, so people are placing orders in this last day of the sale. It's operational again. So the cyber attack on authorized.net, which is international exchanges and financial, is now operational again. But it shows you how fragile our system is. And I really think, as you're laying out all the very technical things, and by the way, you do a better job than anybody I know, even the people that presume to be financial experts, because everything's based on the idea that the most powerful mechanism for gaining more wealth and more power and more control is war. And the making of war, in between big wars, is the selling of military-industrial supplies.
It's very profitable in 2 major ways. One, it's a generator of deficit spending, which means for the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Warburg, Schiffs, Goldman Sachs, etc., families that control the Federal Reserve System, it's profit. Deficit spending is profit. Okay. Secondly, they also own the big defense contractors. So, they're feeding at the trough twice, at least. And but let me finish up real quick on this Damascus thing and Baghdad thing. So we didn't go to Baghdad, but during the presidency of Clinton, we weakened Hussein. We weakened Hussein, and he gave up. Eventually, he gave up all of his weapons of mass destruction. A few months thereafter, we began the second Gulf War, the Iraqi War, and we went into Baghdad. Now, about a year ago, as part of a Russian maneuver to stop the United States and France and Israel from attacking over the bogus issue of Assad's government attacking its own people with chemical warheads, which didn't happen. The Syrian government agreed to destroy all of its chemical warheads. Okay? Now, I don't think they got rid of everything, but they got rid of most. They denuded themselves of one of their most important strategic arms that was directed at Israel. Now that that's diluted, what you've seen is this buildup of ISIS. Came out of nowhere, now all of a sudden, and they're fairly close to Damascus. And the Syrian army has been kicking the heck out of them, but they have infinite money, and there are millions of poor Arab men throughout North Africa and Arabia, plus people in other places that aren't even a part of the Middle East that are Islamic, that they're offering enormous amounts of cash to go and fight, $50,000, $100,000. And I mean, this is if you're living on $5,000 a year or $3,000 a year, somebody offers you $50,000.
Tim,
it gives you a shiny
Tim, what's
new
going to
rifle.
happen? Just want to focus down here. What's going to happen, though, is despite the fact that we have a sickening pretender to the throne in the White House that actually is not even an American, who doesn't act as leader, the Joint Chiefs of Staff are going to have to respond to this mess. And this is what I predict. I predict, number one, that by the fall, the Strait of Hormuz will close. And that means after the 7-cycled Shemitah years, which ends in a jubilee starting this September 24th, after the Days of Atonement, at 1 minute I call it, we're going to have a catastrophe. We're on the edge of an economic catastrophe in Europe and worldwide. We're on the edge of a closure of the Strait of Hormuz. For example, the fall of Palmyra, and I see you have an article here on the Talmud talking about how the Jewish, when these are Sabbatean Satanists, by the way, if Jesus was here, he would call them what they are, which is of the synagogue of Satan. That's his terms. People always think that Jesus was Mr. Nice Guy. No, he wasn't. Deagle is a lot more like Jesus than you can imagine.
And
he spoke the truth, man. If he was a talk radio host, he'd be on this network talking just like I am right now, saying he'd call it as it is. And he wouldn't make it all nice and schmoozy to say, I'm Jesus, I'm a nice guy. No, he's not. He's going to say it the way it is because he's the incarnation of God who calls it as it is.
Well,
and when the Talmud says they want to see the fall of Palmyra,
God is infinitely powerful, and he will not tolerate lies.
Well, you put in here, Yev 17a, the future destruction of Palmyra will be a day of rejoicing for Israel. Gosh.
Well, that's based on Talmudic writings.
The Talmud of Babylon is an ancient demonic document over 1,600 years of living in Babylon and becoming Babylonian Satanistic so-called anti-Jews. These are people that worship the coiled serpent god and worship basically super science and the idea that they're literally the lineal overlords of Earth, and they're going to crush the rest of the population of the planet under their boot. And if people think, well, that's just a delusion. No, it's not. The entire clique of international bankers and global elite and super scientists that are pushing this want to fuse with technology and create a caste society where everybody else is basically a soulless dog and treated as such, and they literally become the overlords of the planet, exploring the galaxy, etc. That's what they believe. People say, oh, no, they don't believe that.
Does that sound like it comes from God?
No. And people need to call it what it is.
Look at it. Just stand back and look at it. Is this something loving from God? Because God is love.
Right. Well, this is one of the reasons why a lot of Jews became
and fair. And
Tim,
no, this is something that's hatred based. That's
well. This is one of the reasons, Tim. This is the reason why a lot of Jews literally rejected religion outright, because there's so much Talmud, and a lot of the followers 2.5 centuries ago followed Shabtai Tzvi and Jacob Frank, the two anti-messiahs that actually converted over 50% of Jews, according to Barry Chamish, who's Jewish himself, believed this, and it's the source of Talmudic Judaism is the source of labor Zionism and the Communist Party in Russia that took over the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a complete Sabbatean Jewish takeover by international bankers and a cabal to destroy the Tsar and Tsarina because they were Christian. People need to understand.
Led the assassination plot in Sarajevo.
And Trotsky was, by the way, from I believe it was.
He was Jewish.
Yeah, but he was from America. He was from I think it was New Jersey originally. New Jersey.
Yeah, but his parents came over from Russia.
Right, exactly. Tim, we're not fearmongers. To be honest with you, I'm an optimist. That's why I do this program. And I want people to understand what we're trying to do is we're trying to say if God is our God, no matter what happens, we don't need to hide. God will give us directions where to be, what city. The first thing I tell principals is get out of the big cities. Get away from the downwind exposure to a nuclear plant. Primarily, get yourself prepped up in America. Don't think you're going to run to some other country and think it's going to be wonderful, where you have a totally different culture and language, and think you're going to be safe when a lot of these countries are extremely corrupt, and you're going to be shocked by what lifestyle you have there. Be aware that if things start to deteriorate, a lot of the control matrix, which is based in communications and money, etc., is gone. So the globalists basically have a very fragile control, and if even a minority of the people just say no, for example, I tell people don't watch any, and I just stopped watching Fox News. I used to watch O'Reilly, but when you start attacking, think, well, we can revise the Patriot Act. No, you can't. Patriot Act is a clear violation, and when I saw Dana Perino, this idiot, I call the quintessential dumb blonde info babe, trying to tell us it's a good idea, and acting indignant over the fact that Dr. Rand Paul, who's a brain, is actually not far falling from the tree from Ron Paul, says how much of a violation, gives exquisite technical answers, and these idiots don't want to respond to each one of his points that he mentions in his 10-hour plus rant at the Senate. And these idiots, luckily over the weekend, didn't pass this thing, which, by the way, expires the end of this week. People need to understand, even this terror porn by singing out all over the blogosphere, there's going to be a big San Andreas earthquake. At the same time, The Rock, which has got the biggest, most scary-looking eyes, I guess, in WWF or on movies, if you want to see somebody that looks frightened, you see the white all around his eyes when he gets that serious look on his face. San Andreas is a big superquake in California.
When are they releasing that movie?
End of this week. It's literally this Thursday, 2 days from now.
So
these morons are trying to predict a superquake.
The planetary alignment is going to cause an earthquake on the San Andreas Fault.
Okay, now let me give you some technical response to this. If you put telluric currents at the right harmonic frequency, you can release the rock force energy in microquakes every day. It's very simple technology. If somebody out there says, Dr. Deagle, you can't give us specific technical details, I can. In fact, I can say this right now.
Well, what
anybody
you do,
listening to this program,
what you just described is you're releasing pressure gradually instead of a big build-up movement.
Right, and I'm going to make a statement here. There's no technical, geopolitical, spiritual, or other problem that I can't, if I don't have an immediate answer, go back to God in prayer and we'll give you one, like my ancestor Moses. I'm telling you right now, anybody out there challenges me on any area, in any sphere, I will give them either an answer or a solution or a framework for an answer. We can come back with an answer in prayer. And I'm going to tell you out there, it's not a matter of whether we have answers, because there are answers. The fact is, the globalists are so hell-bent on doing this, they'll continue to lie to you while they're telling you that the Patriot Act doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, doesn't violate civil liberties, doesn't turn you into a serf. Doesn't violate to turn you into a serf. They don't need to have this metadata garbage gathering. They haven't collected any one person. But yet at the same time, they allow in every southern, basically we call CONUS, or the contiguous area of the United States of America area, civil detention training camps by ISIS, ISIL, which are supported by the CIA, NSA, etc., and yet, at the same time, they're using live ammunition in these training camps, and we don't shut them down. And you're going to tell me that they don't want terrorism? Of course they do. When all hell breaks loose, they want to make sure these Muslim terror groups go crazy, and a lot of them are on a short leash.
Yeah,
they make sure
there's a lot more of us than there are them, and they're
yeah, but the government wants enough chaos because they want us to not interfere with their survival when they dive, when we call dumpster dive into their underground hotels, they call them. And people say, no, they're not doing that. You're just a conspiracy theorist. You're psychotic, Deagle. No, you need to shut the hell up, but people that say this stuff. You need to stop using ad hominem attacks to think it's going to protect you from your gutlessness and your unwillingness to check out the truth and find out yourself. I tell people, for God's sake, don't believe anything I say or Tim. Read the articles. Your entire blog is link, and major news articles by major journalists.
I make comments on it, and I'm working with Jeff.
Right. So when people want to say it's conspiracy theory, that's like trying to slap us in the face. Say they can't read, they don't want to read, they don't want to ask questions so they can own the truth themselves, and they're gutless enough to actually make stupid comments about us.
It's very scary. I have friends of mine, literally in some cases my entire life, and they have read my blog, and it scares the hell out of them. And they don't read it anymore. And then they try to argue with me about some points, and I said,
I have listeners to the program that respect me.
How many hours per day do you spend? Because I spend about 6 or more hours per day putting my little blog together and getting ready for this show, 7 days a week. And I've been doing stuff like this. I started cutting out articles when I was in grade school and, trying to figure stuff out. I mean, I've been at this game for over 50 years now.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time. And do I make mistakes? I guarantee you. I mean, I fall on my face all the time.
But guess what, Tim?
I don't think you actually. But what I do have is a lot of knowledge based on reading and studying and being analytical. Well, and most people, if you get your knowledge from Fox News or ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, it's all from 6 corporations that are globalist owned, that are Zionist ran, and you're being led down the primrose path. And, when I go, yes, I use the mainstream media.
I got a new term for you, Tim.
Media, but I put stuff together. And that's what you have to do, And
there's 3 things that you do, Tim.
We don't do that anymore, I guess.
Tim, there's 3 things that you do that are unique.
They're taught to be stupid.
Number 1, you actually support your statements as facts. Number 2, you don't jump to conclusions. And number 3, it's biblically supported. Now, these people I call info whores. Info whores, okay? And the info whores are out there basically to take a portion of truth and spin it enough. It's like taking a great big piece of steak and taking a little knife and putting a pellet of cyanide in the middle. So that big yummy steak, the Rottweiler goes, good steak. And all of a sudden the dogs go, ooh, and it starts making whimpering sounds because it's dying. And that information is dying in people. They basically think, Deagle and Alexander do not deserve respect. They're nuts. They're going to try to scare you. And you know what? I think the exact opposite. I think
you can say whatever you want about me. I don't care.
Yeah, but here's the point.
I know
we actually are optimists, Tim.
And I know God, and I know where we're at, and I know we're in the end times, and I read so much. Look, the globalists need
Tim, let me finish here.
Soft kill and hard kill methods is one of the stories I've linked in the last couple of days. And it talks about the fact Roundup. I mean, if Roundup isn't a deliberate kill program, I don't know what is.
Well, look at Corexit 9500. The other branches of the U.S. military use other agents for getting rid of oil to have Bunker C come out of their bunkers of their ship. They have other ways that are non-toxic to get rid of oil spills, etc. But guess what? The only one that the government would authorize is a toxic one that would cause shrimp to not have eyeballs and toxically affect the food supply for people to cause birth defects in humans.
And guess what? British Petroleum is getting ready to drill right where they caused all that problem.
And they have no way of handling the pressure down there at that level. And they also know that there's 1.5 miles to 2 miles thick of what's called methane hydrates. Now, you know how much energy is stored in methane hydrates? They calculated out at the bottom of the oceans in the world, there's 3,000 to 5,000 times more energy stored in the methane hydrates just at the ocean floor than all the oil and coal supplies on the planet. So imagine 5,000 times more energy, and at the surface, methane hydrates are 684 times more volume. So you literally can have a methane hydrate tsunami. So that potential drill site could actually create a methane hydrate tsunami. And when they discovered this, the United Nations moved the trucks back 100 miles in from the coast of the Gulf of Mexico to make sure the United Nations trucks wouldn't get swamped by the tsunami because it would be that big. Now, people don't know this, but they think, oh, well, you're just speculating, Deagle. No, I got my sources, believe me or not, right inside the United Nations.
It is documented that they knew when the site at which they drilled at was a do not drill site.
Do you know when they knew that? They knew a year before I was born in 1951.
The sold all their stock.
1951, they knew this. In New Orleans, they had a conference, and they actually were studying the gold theory. And they had a conference that said, do not drill there because the oil pressures will be so high and the danger of a methane hydrate surge could kill everything within 100 miles of the coast.
Well, when people do this type of behavior, it's so nutty, it's beyond nuts, it's demonic.
Right.
I make this point time and time again, and so do you. And the reason it's so important to understand this is the spiritual dimension is the governing force in all.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm a Joshua Christian.
Demonic influences of people
Tim,
that are serving.
We're both Joshua Christians. We're going to stand toe-to-toe with these maniacs. You think you know better? You think you have a higher ground spiritually than us? Let's go for it. Our sword's drawn intellectually and spiritually for you. We're going to battle, and it's battle to the death. Okay, you want to call in someday?
Do
it.
That sword.
Yeah, our sword is drawn. We're ready for you.